The hollow echo. It doesn't come with a scream. It doesn't even come with pain. It arrives quietly like fog slipping through a cracked window. You don't notice it at first. The shift you're working. Texting, scrolling, you laugh at things, you reply. To people you smile on cue, and yet behind your eyes, something is missing, a hollowness, a soft echo where your voice used to be. This isn't sadness. Sadness is alive. It cries. It aches. It hopes what you're feeling is colder, still numb, not broken. Just not there. You lie awake at night. And everything is technically fine. You have what you need. You've done what's expected. But somehow you feel like a stranger in your own skin, a performer, a shadow. And in those moments, those rare, unguarded moments when you're not distracting yourself, you hear it. Not a voice, not a thought, a lack. An absence, like your soul got tired of waiting for you and quietly stepped out. We live in a world that never stops talking. Yet somehow, we've forgotten how to listen. Especially to ourselves, we confuse motion for meaning. We confuse stimulation for substance. But the human soul isn't fooled by dopamine. It doesn't care about how many messages you get or how many reels you swipe through. It craves depth, and when you starve it long enough, it stops crying and starts fading. You weren't born hollow. You didn't come into this world feeling empty. You came full, with curiosity, wonder, desire. But somewhere along the line, something shifted. You learned to suppress questions that didn't have neat answers. You learned to smile when you were exhausted. You learned to say, "I'm fine," while slowly disappearing behind the mask. The script isn't here to tell you what's wrong with you. It's here to show you what you abandoned, your depth. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't feel empty because life is meaningless. They feel empty because they've stopped asking what it should mean to them. Traded inner life for outer validation. They stopped writing poetry and started posting content. They stopped sitting in silence and started swiping for noise. But silence doesn't leave quietly. It waits, and one day, you hear it. A whisper beneath the noise saying, "This isn't enough," not because you're greedy, not because you're flawed, but because you are not built to live at the surface. The body needs food, the mind needs stimulation, but the soul needs depth, and when you abandon that depth, it doesn't punish you, it just leaves, and all that's left is the hollow echo, not of failure, but of neglect. This isn't a crisis of productivity, it's a crisis of presence. A spiritual starvation masked by busyness. A hunger for realness in a world made of highlights and half-truths. Pain you feel isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that something deeper still exists within you. Something real enough to miss itself. So, if you're tired of the noise, if the highlight reels have lost their color, if the chase no longer excites you, then this is for you, not to fix you, but to remind you of what you forgot, that beneath the roles, the routines, the reactions, there's a real you, and it's not lost, it's just waiting. The culture of surface. We live in a world addicted to immediacy. Everything is optimized for speed. Not substance, headlines over nuance, aesthetic over truth, engagement over understanding. And the result is a cultural ecosystem that no longer encourages depth. It fears it. Scroll through your feed. Watch how fast the stories fly by. Watch how each video, each photo, each post is a carefully curated illusion of reality, filtered, edited, exaggerated for effect, not to connect but to perform. And the moment you stop performing, you disappear. This is not just a glitch in the system. It's the system working exactly as designed, in a world where value is measured by visibility. Surface becomes the new soul. Neil Postman, in his prophetic book Amusing Ourselves to Death, warned that culture was becoming entertainment, that serious discourse would be drowned out by spectacle, that we wouldn't need censorship, because we would drown in trivia. He was right. Today, complexity doesn't sell. Algorithms punish. Its subtlety is ignored, context is erased, and introspection is too slow for the feed guy. Debord took it further in The Society of the Spectacle. He argued that we no longer live in reality. We live in its representation. The image has replaced the thing itself. We don't chase truth. We chase what looks like truth. We don't want to be happy. We want to look happy, sound happy, appear successful. Especially to people who don't even know us, we post not to share, but to signal. We speak not to express, but to impress, and slowly, without noticing, we begin to forget how to feel anything that doesn't have an audience. This is the culture of surface, and it is not harmless. Hannah Arendt, reflecting on the horrors of totalitarianism, spoke of the banality of evil, how true danger doesn't always come from monsters, but from ordinary people who stop thinking deeply, people who outsource their moral reasoning, who follow scripts, who no longer ask why, because the asking would interrupt the show. That's where we are now, in a world that treats presence as weakness and silence as failure, where you're expected to have an opinion before you've even understood the question, where complexity is punished because it doesn't fit in a caption. But here's the deeper danger. When a culture rewards shallowness, people begin to shrink their inner lives to survive. They stop bringing their real selves to conversations, because the real self is slow. It hesitates, it contradicts itself, it feels pain, it seeks meaning over momentum, and so we become hollow. Avatars, we present fragments of who we are, the funny version, the smart version, the sexy version, while the rest of us goes unfelt, unlived, unseen in the workplace. This looks like toxic productivity. You're valued for output, not insight. In relationships, it looks like ghosting, where communication collapses under the weight of vulnerability. In politics, it looks like outrage cycles, where every issue is flattened into good versus evil, with no room for nuance, no room for history, no room for truth and in the self. It looks like emptiness, quiet, a numbness that grows stronger the more you try to escape it. The irony is brutal. We are more connected than ever, yet lonelier than ever, surrounded by voices, yet unheard, constantly expressing, yet rarely understood. Because no one is listening, not even to themselves, so we shrink, we become digestible. We hide our complexities to avoid making others uncomfortable. We turn our depth into a secret, something shameful, and soon, we don't even know what it feels like to think deeply, to feel fully, to exist without performing. But you can't perform your way into peace, because here's the truth the surface culture will never tell you. Deeper parts of you, the ones you've buried to fit in, those are not your flaws. They are your access points to meaning. They are what make life worth living. Part of you that doesn't want to post, the part that's tired of arguing, the part that feels too much, that still believes in beauty, that still aches when the world goes quiet. That part of you isn't broken, it's human. It's the part that hasn't been colonized by the spectacle, but to reclaim it, you have to turn away from the noise, from the show, from the hollow praise of performative connection. You have to become willing to feel awkward, to feel unseen, to be misunderstood. For a while, because only when you stop chasing surface can you start remembering depth. Only when you return to depth can you start hearing yourself again. The death of inner dialogue. There was a time when silence felt like possibility, when solitude invited self-exploration rather than mindless scrolling, when a question could hang in the air, heavy with meaning, and you'd lean into it. What do I believe? What do I want? What am I afraid to admit? Today, that inner conversation has atrophied. We've learned to be comfortable with noise, but not with ourselves. Let's call this the death of inner dialogue, the collapse of our capacity to think deeply, to feel profoundly, and to wrestle with discomfort until clarity emerges. Carl Jung believed the human psyche thrives on internal tension between persona and shadow, ego and unconscious. Without it, the psyche stagnates. Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, famously noted that those who lost their sense of inner purpose could not endure the horrors of the concentration camp. Existential purpose is not just preferable, it's essential for resilience. Kierkegaard called the inward turn the frontier of freedom, the space where the individual must stand alone before making real choices. Remove that, and we devolve into conformity, despair, and emptiness. So what dies when inner dialogue dies? Emotional numbness. You stop feeling sadness, anger. Joy, especially when it's inconvenient. Emotional pain is proof of life. But when you avoid it, you lose your emotional range. You become flat, unmoored, hollowed out. Over-reliance on external validation. The inner critic goes silent, replaced by the spectacle critic. You stop asking, "What do I think?" and start asking, "How many likes did I get?" Your measure of worth becomes reaction metrics, reposts, retweets, external applause in place of internal trust. Aversion to solitude. Being alone isn't loneliness. It can be a doorway, but solitary. Hours now terrify us. Silence becomes unbearable. Anxiety rises. We fill the void with podcasts, notifications, binge shows, anything to stop being alone with ourselves. Why? Because without ongoing introspection, your shadow grows. Jung taught that if you don't integrate your darkness, your fears, resentments, regrets, they don't disappear. They fester and return as addiction, projection, anger, or despair. Social media, streaming, and overwork provide temporary relief, but not healing. Abandoning your depth creates a psychic wound. It's like forgetting to water a plant for a while. It looks fine, then it droops, then it withers, then it dies or becomes so brittle that a minor shock breaks it. Modern culture doesn't want this pathology exposed. Institutions depend on complacency. Eyes on the screen, minds on autopilot. Consumers, not questioners. We've traded dialogue for dopamine. We've sacrificed the rich complexity of inner life for instant gratification. We've settled for craving more stimulation instead of seeking understanding. The cost, a void at the center, so pervasive that meaning becomes an unfamiliar word. Belief without context becomes shallow ideology. Anger without reflection becomes hatred. Love without introspection becomes attachment. Jung's remedy? Reconnect. Name your shadow. Invite your doubts into the light. Wrestle with discomfort. Ask yourself, what story am I staying quiet about? What belief am I too afraid to challenge? What emotion did I learn to avoid? Frankl's remedy? Find meaning in suffering. Ask, what responsibility can I accept right now? What truth can I stand for, even in anonymity? Kierkegaard's remedy? Choose to be with yourself. Let restlessness be a guide, not a threat. Let stillness do its work. All three call us home into ourselves, to recover the conversation with our depth, to relearn the sound of our own voice, to remember that inner silence does not mean absence, but invitation, because until you can sit with your thoughts and feelings without performance, approval, or avoidance, you will never truly live. You'll simulate existence, you'll echo others' voices, and you'll feel distant from the one voice you actually need to hear. Your own real transformation doesn't happen in the noise. It happens in the dialogue inside, between you and your unspoken complexity, between your known self and your hidden parts, between your will and your wonder. And yes, it's terrifying, because once you begin to listen, everything changes. Priorities shift, beliefs tremble, relationships break, roles fall away. You wake up, not because the world woke you, but because you woke yourself. This is the risk. This is the gift. This is the invitation of inner dialogue. It is not therapy. It is accountability. It is not entertainment. It is reality, not show, but substance. And though the silence may be deafening at first, over time, it becomes symphony, symmetry, a sanctuary, a place where truth isn't loud but real. So when you feel the urge to scroll, to binge, to distract, don't postpone the death of your inner dialogue. Interrupt it. Sit, breathe, ask one question and wait. Wait for the echo. Wait for the stir. Wait for the conversation, because whatever dims within you cannot speak. But what is dimmed can be kindled. What is broken can be heard. What is lost can be found. That is the sacred conversation you didn't realize you were missing, and the journey you've. When the soul goes silent, there is a particular kind of emptiness that doesn't announce itself with loud agony. It doesn't break windows or scream in alleyways. It whispers, it lingers, it tightens behind your ribcage. When the noise fades and the lights dim, it visits. Not in moments of chaos, but in the stillness after, when the distraction ends and all you're left with is the silence of something that once lived in you, now gone for a long time. We've been taught to see these moments as symptoms: depression, anxiety, chemical imbalance. We've been told that discomfort is malfunction, that pain must be medicated, that silence must be filled. And while there is truth in the science of serotonin and trauma, not all pain is pathological. Some of it is poetic, some of it spiritual. The soul doesn't vanish when ignored. It waits patiently, like a voice beneath the floorboards. And when we stray too far from ourselves, it speaks, not with language, but with hunger, a hunger that success cannot satisfy, that relationships cannot quiet, that pleasure cannot sedate. Thomas More wrote, "The soul doesn't care about convenience or social success. It only cares that you're living with meaning. But meaning is not a product of achievement. It's not something you buy, post, or win. Meaning is born through depth, the kind of inner dialogue that can't be rushed, commodified, or optimized." Carl Jung called it individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the fragmented parts of the self into a coherent whole. It's not a goal. It's a confrontation with your shadow, with your wounds, with the parts of you society never wanted to see. And when that confrontation is delayed, when you choose noise over stillness, distraction over reflection, validation over truth, the soul goes silent, not out of punishment, but protest, because your inner world has become inhospitable to its nature. We live in an age that rewards surface and punishes depth. We call people too sensitive when they feel too much, too intense when they speak from the gut, too dramatic when their emotions won. To stay quiet, so we adapt. We smile on command, we answer fine. When we're unraveling, we master the art of functioning while spiritually starved. But the soul cannot be buried forever. Its silence becomes symptoms, a restlessness that doesn't go away, a sadness that follows you into achievement, a craving for something, but you're not sure what. This is not weakness. This is the call. Religious mystics across centuries spoke of this moment as the dark night of the soul, a period not of failure, but of descent, a descent into the lost chambers of the self, where the ego no longer works, where identities unravel, where meaning has not yet arrived. It feels like dying, because a part of you is the part that was performative, the part that conformed to survive, the part that numbed itself to stay accepted. And what's left behind is the raw material of a new self, one that's not yet formed, but beginning to remember. This pain is not just emotional, it's existential, spiritual, archetypal. It does not need to be diagnosed. It needs to be honored. Jung wrote, "Only the paradox comes anywhere near to comprehending the fullness of life." And here lies the paradox. You are both empty and full of longing. You are both lost and closer to truth than ever before. Psychology too often misses this. It reduces the ache to brain chemistry, forgetting that the soul has its own biology, a language that doesn't fit into metrics or manuals. It speaks through yearning, through awe, through dreams you can't forget, and questions you can't stop asking. What if your sadness is not a sickness but a signal? What if your craving is not immoral but meaningful? What if your emptiness is not proof of failure, but the beginning of something more real than anything you've ever known? This is not an argument against treatment or science. This is a reminder that you are more than flesh and neurons. You are a soul, born into a culture that taught you to betray your own depth for performance. But the soul remembers, even when you forget. And if you listen closely, in the stillest part of night, it will speak, not in words, in ache, in the strange pull to be alone, in the desire to weep for something you can't name, in the haunting sense that life is supposed to feel more alive than this. You are not broken. You are being called back, not to religion, not to ideology, but to yourself, to the wild, uncurated parts of you that still believe in wonder, that still ache for truth, that still remember what it means to feel deeply and live fully. The silence inside you is not a void. It's a voice, and it's been waiting for you to stop scrolling, stop pretending, stop rushing, so you can finally hear what it's been trying to say all along. I miss you, come home. The great betrayal, trading authenticity for acceptance. There is a moment in every human life that does not make headlines. No one talks about it. No one marks it with ceremony. But it changes everything. It is the moment you realize that being yourself is not safe. It happens early. For some, in the echoes of a disapproving look. For others, in the cold silence that follows an honest emotion. It doesn't take much, just one moment of punishment for being real, just one reward for being something else, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, you begin to shift. You become agreeable, you become responsible, you become exactly what is expected of you, and in doing so, you begin to disappear. This is the great betrayal, not of others, but of yourself. Erich Fromm called it this escape from freedom. He saw how modern individuals, overwhelmed by uncertainty and inner conflict, often choose security over authenticity. We trade our voice for validation. We outsource our sense of self to the approval of others, and it works. For a while you become liked, respected, even admired. But beneath the applause, something dies. The pulse of your real self, the wild, questioning, imperfect, deeply alive self, fades into silence. Gabor Mate, exploring trauma and addiction, speaks of this trade-off as a survival strategy. As children, we're wired for two essential needs: authenticity and attachment. But when being authentic threatens attachment, when expressing our truth risks losing the love we depend on, we choose attachment every time we disown parts of ourselves just to stay close to those we need. This isn't weakness, it's adaptation. You don't betray yourself because you're flawed. You betray yourself because at some point, the world taught you it was dangerous not to, but what begins as protection becomes a prison. You grow up mastering the art of performance. You say what they want to hear. You act how they want you to act. You smile on command. You become a mirror for other people's expectations, and forget there was ever a face behind it. And then one day, it cracks. You look in the mirror and realize you don't know who's looking back. You reach for your desires and come up empty. You say yes and feel dead inside. You function, you succeed, you even impress, but you are not alive, not fully, not honestly. This moment, when the betrayal becomes unbearable, is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough, because you begin to ask dangerous questions, not about the world, but about yourself. Who was I before I was told who to be? What do I want? Not just what's expected of me. What am I feeling beneath the masks and the mantras? These questions are terrifying because they don't just challenge your behavior, they challenge your identity. The self you've spent years constructing, layer by layer, might not be real. It might be a costume stitched together from fear, approval, and avoidance. But beneath that costume, there is still a self, still alive, still waiting. Jung believed that wholeness is not found in perfection, but in integration, the reunion of the fragmented parts we abandoned to survive. And that reunion begins when we stop lying to ourselves, when we stop performing, when we stop mistaking conformity for character. The truth is, most people are not themselves. They are a version of themselves created by necessity. You became quiet because it kept the peace. You became strong because weakness was mocked. You became helpful because love had to be earned. But the roles we adopt become cages, and the longer we stay in them, the more distant we become from our own souls. This is why, in a world that values performance, authenticity feels like rebellion. It's why being honest feels dangerous. It's why saying no feels like a risk, even when you're dying to say it, because somewhere inside, the child you once were still believes that being real will cost you love, and until that belief is challenged, you'll keep betraying yourself for a sense of safety that's slowly killing you. But there's another way. It begins with noticing the subtle moments when you override your intuition. The instant you say yes when you mean no, the tightness in your chest when you smile through discomfort. These are not small things. They are clues, warnings. The body remembering what the mind tries to forget. Then comes the remembering, not of facts, but of feeling of who you were before the edits, the spontaneous laugh, the tear you didn't apologize for, the dream you stopped speaking of the version of you that wasn't polished, but was real, and finally, the risk to live again from that place, to let go of the roles, to speak with your own voice, to disappoint others, but not yourself. It will be uncomfortable. People will question. Some will leave, but what you gain is worth more than their approval. You gain yourself, you gain the aliveness that only comes when you're no longer split in two. You gain peace, not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of alignment. The truth is, the world does not need more perfect people. It needs more real ones, people willing to show up messy, honest, and whole. And that begins when you stop abandoning yourself for acceptance, when you stop rehearsing your lines and start speaking your truth, when you stop performing for a world that never cared about your soul, and start living for the part of you that's been waiting to be seen. You are not too much, you are just remembering who you were before the betrayal. Welcome back. Depth is dangerous and necessary. Depth is not lost. It is fled when we like to believe our emptiness is accidental, the result of a busy schedule, a distracted mind, a fast-moving world. But that's not the truth. Depth is missing, not because we misplaced it, but because we were taught to fear it, because real depth is dangerous. It doesn't flatter the ego, it doesn't play nice, it doesn't let you pretend, it confronts you with things you've buried, truths you've avoided, and wounds you've normalized. Depth doesn't ask for your comfort, it demands your courage. Carl Jung called this the process of individuation, the unfolding journey of becoming one's true self, not the socially acceptable self, not the performative identity, but the whole, integrated person, shadows and all. And this journey, Jung warned, is not for the faint of heart. It requires descent, it requires solitude, and it often begins in crisis, because the truth is, most people avoid their depth not out of laziness, but out of fear. To go deep is to risk unraveling the story you've told yourself about who you are. And for many, that story is the only thing holding their identity together. So instead, we stay on the surface, we keep things light, we distract, we scroll, we cling to routines, we chase novelty, and all the while, a quiet ache grows inside us, not because something is missing from life, but because something essential has been left out of it. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." But most people no longer ask why, they only ask what's next. What's trending, what's urgent. Meaning has been replaced by momentum. We move fast to avoid standing still, because standing still might bring us face to face with the emptiness we've been trying to escape. Depth threatens everything we've built on illusion, and society is built on many social roles. Consumer identities, curated personas, they all depend on us not looking too closely, not feeling too deeply, not thinking too critically, because to really look might mean we stop participating. To feel deeply might mean we stop pretending. To think critically might mean we stop obeying, and that is dangerous. The myth of Prometheus captures this tension perfectly. He stole fire from the gods, not just literal fire, but metaphorical illumination. He gave humanity light, awareness, knowledge, and for this, he was punished, not killed, but bound, chained to a rock, liver eaten daily by an eagle, regenerating endlessly, pain without death, suffering without release. That is the cost of depth, to see what others do not, to carry truth in a world addicted to denial. But Prometheus also represents the other side of this equation. The necessity of rebellion. He did not wait for permission. He did not accept ignorance as virtue. He risked everything so humanity could awaken, and in doing so, he became both cursed and immortalized. This is the paradox. Depth may hurt, but it also heals. It may isolate, but it also awakens. It may dismantle your old self, but only so your real self can emerge, and so your emptiness, that hollowness you feel in the quiet moments, is not a defect. It's a message, a signal that the surface no longer satisfies you. A warning that the script you've been following is not your own. But you must choose. Depth is never forced. It whispers. It waits, and when you ignore it long enough, it turns into symptoms: restlessness, numbness, addiction, existential dread. The soul doesn't disappear. It protests, and its protest sounds a lot like your discomfort in a world that rewards appearances and punishes authenticity. Choosing depth is a radical act, but it's the only path that leads somewhere real, because when you go deep, truly deep, you don't just uncover pain. You uncover power, the power to think independently, to feel fully, to act authentically too. Live with purpose. It won't make you invincible, but it will make you honest. It will strip away what no longer serves you. It will replace imitation with truth, and it will remind you that the ache inside you was never a weakness. It was a compass, pointing home, so the next time you feel that quiet emptiness, that vague hunger that no distraction can satisfy, don't run from it. Listen. That is your soul speaking, and what it's telling you is this: it's time to go deeper, because only in the depths can you find what you were truly searching for all along. Not relief, not distraction, but meaning; not escape, but return; not illusion, but truth. Depth is dangerous, but living without it is fatal. Reclaiming the forgotten self. Word count 800. The real tragedy is not that we feel lost, it's that we don't know how to come home, because the person we abandoned was never a stranger. It was ourselves, the real self, the curious one, the emotional one, the one who once asked difficult questions without shame and craved connection without apology. That self didn't disappear. It got buried beneath deadlines, masks, performances, and cultural scripts that taught us how to succeed but not how to feel. So how do we begin again? Not with a fix, but with a return. Stillness over noise. That's the first step. Not because silence is peaceful, but because it's honest in stillness. We hear the ache we've avoided, the inner voice we've drowned out, the deeper self we've mistaken for weakness. We don't numb it anymore. We listen. Stillness becomes a mirror, reflecting not who you're trying to be, but who you've always been. Then comes the act of journaling. Not for productivity, but for excavation. To write honestly and without censorship is to invite the forgotten self back into the room. Not the polished voice of your resume, not the curated captions of your highlight reel, but the raw, wounded, beautiful mess that has been waiting for you to stop pretending. This is where shadow work begins, a practice Carl Jung believed was essential for wholeness. To explore the parts of ourselves we've disowned, the shame, the fear, the anger, the need, not to eliminate them, but to integrate them, because healing isn't about erasing what hurt, it's about making peace with it. Reclaiming your shadows doesn't make you broken, it makes you whole from there. You choose depth over speed, you slow down, you stop measuring your life in metrics and start measuring it in moments. Presence becomes more important than performance. You choose conversations that nourish, not perform. You pursue meaning, not momentum. Solitude becomes sacred, not isolation, but the kind of solitude where your mind can wander, where your soul can breathe. You remember what it feels like to be with yourself, not as a punishment, but as a return. You stop fearing alone time. You start craving it, because in solitude, you meet the parts of you no one else sees, and you learn to love them anyway. And finally, silence becomes medicine, not the silence that comes from repression, but the silence that holds space, that listens, that asks no questions, makes no demands. The silence where the soul whispers, "Thank you for coming back." We reference here the inner child, a concept Gabor Mate. Many trauma-informed psychologists return to Koos, because the version of you that craves depth is not new. It's ancient. It's the child who felt too much, needed too much, sensed too much. The child who learned to shrink, to please, to be what others needed instead of what they were. That child never left. They just went underground, and now you bring them home. This is not a checklist. It's not a morning routine. It's not an influencer's guide to getting your life together. It's deeper than that. It's about returning to your origin, Not the one your society sold you, but the one your soul remembers, because you are not empty. You are buried beneath expectations that never fit, beneath roles you never chose, beneath the fear that if people saw who you really were, they would leave. But the truth is, you are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not too honest or too complicated or too intense. You are just awake in a world that rewards sleep. And yes, reclaiming your depth is hard. It will cost you your illusions. It will disrupt your relationships. It will make you question everything you once called success. But what you receive in return is something no system, no platform, no external validation can offer. You, your real self, the one that feels, the one that sees, the one that is alive. When you reclaim that, the world may not get easier, it may not get quieter, but it will feel more real, and you will no longer be a stranger to your own life. So, stop performing, stop running, stop numbing, and listen. The ache inside you is not your enemy, it's your invitation not to fix yourself, but to find yourself, because what you are looking for is not out there. It's in the silence you've been avoiding, in the question you've been afraid to ask, in the presence you've been withholding from your own soul. And when you stop abandoning your depth, you will finally come home, not to a place, to yourself. If you found this exploration of Stoicism inspiring, please like the video, subscribe to the channel for more philosophical insights, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us continue to bring you content that enriches your life. Thank you for watching.